we all know that we want to, eliminate the bioburden that's on the instrumentation. But for us to do that in sterile processing, we need to be a team of instrument preparers and have that OR kind of do their part in getting that bioburden off of those instrumentation and keeping it moist.
If you have more positive pressure in your clean environment, it's going to be pushing that clean air out into the negative environment. So you want your adjacent spaces to have a negative pressure flow where that dirty air, if you will stay outside, and your clean air is supporting all of your processed goods.
She was ready to leave, and you know how some people want to leave their legacy, and that's one thing that she wanted to do. Well, one of the things that she wanted to do before she actually left, and that was to build that new sterile processing department from the ground up. And she says, I think it's time. I think you can handle it.
Most decontaminants are undersized, so as you fill them up with the case carts, and during peak time, the case carts just, as you're backlogged, the case carts take up a lot of space, and then you're trying to push everything through the washer. So I think that's a huge, huge one.
And one of the challenges that we ran into a lot in that department was you had a team of 30, 40 OR personnel putting away surgical instruments, pulling case carts, and whenever they called asking where something is, we had no idea. We just reprocessed it and sent it back to the OR.
It'd be amazing to actually see blueprints of SPDs across the country and how they compare to the images that you even see in the Amy Standard book, because after the fact, there's been so many times I've worked at facilities and I'm like, who built this place? Who did you guys consult to make the sterile storage area of all places? Because it's never enough space.
It's a balancing act. Every shift has their own problems, but overnight seems like it's almost like a skeleton crew all the time, like the weekend. At least where I've worked. I'm sure there might be another place that may be better staffed, but I think it's a fairly common problem.
Right? Why not leverage those experiences and have those conversations? I think a lot of times folks are we're watching and we're on the sidelines and we don't think we have a space to jump in, but we're talking amongst each other. This is SPD to SPD. Speak up.
I've had naysayers become the biggest advocates of the program once it was done. You'd be surprised. The people were like, oh, this is not going to work. That's not enough room. I have too much stuff. I don't know how they're going to expect us to downsize. This is just ridiculous. And then after you show them and they get to design and they get to measure things out and they realize, hey, this actually works. Great. Thanks. From the naysayer, they go to the full opposite end of the spectrum and they are your biggest supporters.
You've got the water boiling, you've got the water running, you've got something on medium, you've got something on high. It's a concert and you have to keep things going. And in the back of your mind, you have to realize, you're also filling a canister with water. You can't let it overflow. And conversely, you've got to pay attention to your supply.
And you really have to figure out what works best for you and what are you finding is cleaning correctly. One of the trials we did for a cost savings initiative, we trialed a competitive product from what we were currently using. We found that if we decreased our dilution ratio from a full ounce to a half ounce, we were still within range of the product, but we were actually going to save money by sticking with the same vendor.
But you have to think, though, what about your ancillary departments? What about the OR attached? So I was like, I don't know where I got to take them. I got to take them down outside to the hallway, down to the, the fry shack, where do we got to go?
There isn't one magic bullet, one magic chemical that does all things. It's more often than not a mixture of different things.
We are currently looking at working together with an ASTM collaboration group to answer your very question, because that is something that we have been approached in the standard committees, and this question has been arised by many, and we don't know the answer. So we have created this group that's going to do a round-robin testing and see if that's even applicable.
And so that's what's most commonly used would be sterile water for flushing. And then you don't run into those issues of, is my detergent, does it have a lot of particulate matter in it? Is it very hard water that could potentially clog nozzles on the scope? So that's why we recommend that the sterile water be used.
If you want to understand how your test works, try testing it with minimal detergent to see if you still get a pass or if you get a fail as you would expect.
here's this chemical, we use it for this. This is what we're going to do today now that we're in decontam for the day. Here is the wipes that we use for our tabletops for prep and pack. You know, you're kind of introduced to the chemicals as you meet them. I mean, that's the big thing, is like as you meet them, as they're brought into your repertoire of what you're learning in sterile processing, that's just a lot of how people learn chemicals, really.
You know, I have a certain methodology I've adopted over the years. I'm a very system-oriented person, so I tweak the system, and it seems to have worked. But, you know, really it's kind of getting the operator engaged and understanding kind of how the theory works, right? How to demystify the box a bit. When I hit start, what happens? What's that noise? You know, and then moving on into control systems and how they operate.
Nowadays, of course, we have more and more washer disinfectors with glass doors. So if there are glass doors, you can see the spray arms turning. If they're clogged, because they turn to the water pressure, that makes the arm turn. So if there are spray arms clogged, they will not turn. But you have to see it, you have to realize it, and what do? Do you stop the cycle? I don't know.
And sometimes it's just best to almost look at it like you do in your kitchen at home. You know, you could have a nice big sink bowl, but if it's full of dishes and you don't have space to put more dirty dishes and then set the clean dishes to dry, it's unproductive.
Hank was right. The biggest pain point for you when you're in decon, one of the biggest pain points is sitting there waiting for someone to unload the cart washer. And especially if you're in a facility where maybe there's only 3 of you working, right? Somebody's in decon, somebody's in prep and pack, and somebody's running. So wouldn't it be great, instead of having to take off all your PPE, wash your hands, get new clean hair bonnet on, new clean shoe covers, go into the sterile side, unload the cart washer, then re-gown again? I mean, the automation, I feel like we're probably right there. It's got to be coming, but I think that would be such a game changer for us.
We all know space is a commodity in a hospital. That you got to work with what you got. So having that 3 rooms really helps, but not everyone can do that. So you have to enter one way and exit the other. If anything starts to come back, then you're just opening up that Pandora's box where anything can get cross-contaminated.
This is a piece of equipment that is sealing a sterile barrier. This is that last barrier keeping the contents sterile before it's used on a patient. It's extremely important. So it's not that benign piece of equipment. It's imperative that it's functioning properly.
Maybe it's not brushes. Maybe it's devices that are getting used inside of these devices. Maybe it's different chemicals, ways that these devices are manufactured. But I don't know exactly what it'll be, but I think there's going to be a lot of things that will help us be better collectively as a whole, healthcare collaborative.
But an ultrasonic transducer, which is what generates the ultrasonic cleaning activity, can be incorporated into other equipment, including sinks with dedicated ultrasonic bays, into washer disinfectors with ultrasonic cleaning chambers. So it's not just about freestanding sonics. There is other technology and ways to get that ultrasonic energy to clean instrumentation.
I think you can teach those medical students and the residents some about the business, but honestly, I think the best thing you can teach them is know who, like your who versus your how, you know what I mean? So it's like, know who to put in that place.
It's being comfortable and aware and making them feel that they are an individual and that they're not different in a strange way, that I'm making them comfortable and I'm talking to them like they are an individual just like I'm an individual, and bringing that level of comfort.
And likewise, I've been to central sterile processing many times. I bring donuts. So we have a session where why do we need 4 different kerosins for a laminectomy? 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter, 4 millimeter. Why, they're all kerosins, they all bite bone, but why do we need them? And so that people can understand we need them because at certain parts of exposing a nerve root, we are in smaller places, and that's why we need these.
I think what you realize why surgeons have a more invested interest in that is because those are becoming the real pain points for our ability to take care of patients. And, we feel as a whole that our rate limiting step should be what we need to do to our patient at that time. And our focus should be primarily on that. And so when all these outside forces affect my ability to focus on what my primary focus should be, that becomes a major pain point that I'm going to take interest in and try to help solve that problem or make it a little bit better for everybody else, right?
And if you go down and take some time to see it, you walk down in our sterile processing and we're a couple hundred trays behind, perhaps, and it's chaos down there, and you have pulled clinical people from the OR to come down and help run through and get things back on track. You really quickly understand that this is a very, very complex problem.
The fundamental, compass here, our North Star, is what is best for the human, right? Inside of all this are people doing this work. And we have to figure out how to give them better tools and better environments to do this. Because why would you do this and get paid what you're getting paid if you know the system's broken, you can't fix this, and this is hurting patients? A lot of people are going to carry that moral injury with them. And so I think, this goes back to why we do this research.
To be honest with you, that first year at the bottom of the triangle, you truly are at the bottom. You learn a lot about yourself and the people around you, but often you're just trying to survive. As each year builds with more experience, so becomes more autonomy. And the things that seemed as basic as where the bathroom is now evolves to where is the operating room and who's in the operating room and what cases are happening in the operating room.
I teach all my residents, when I teach residents, that my favorite instrument is my second hand, right? So my left hand is my favorite instrument. It's like the most versatile. It's attached to me. I've got it with me all the time. So my non-dominant hand is my favorite surgical instrument. But one that can be sterilized is, so I use this soft tissue forceps we call it a pelvic forceps. Some sterile processing people call it a Manhattan forceps, but it's a soft tissue forceps. It's kind of fatter. It's got a tying platform. It's got 2 teeth on one side and 1 tooth on the other. And so it's super versatile.
I think it's just because we were really hot. We played around for years with the ideas of the best. They were always heavy. They didn't really cool you. We tried the skull caps, like I said, the things that wrap around your neck. And then we had an employee who was having a rough day and we had to pull her out. So we started bringing up those conversations again. And then we all started talking and Rich was involved, our boss. And we said about the cooling, the flight hoods. The flight hoods. Yeah. And he said that'd be a good option.
The PPE gown must be worn whenever there is a potential for exposure to blood, bloody fluids, or other infectious materials by the 3 S's. Spray, splash, and splatter.
We put them on to protect the shoes and make sure that you're not back in decon sloshing around in all of the water and, anything from the case carts and stuff like that. And in my mind, you say, if you're doffing the way you're supposed to, the no shoe cover should come off. But you see, from a standpoint of not even just us, other people all the time in the hallways with shoe covers on, heading back into all these areas. So what is it really protecting?
The biggest common fallout and what we worry the most about donning and doffing is contaminating themselves, right? That's the biggest piece. I remember when Ebola hit back in, 2014, and we were all over donning and doffing. The order to take it off, how to take it off, a room to take it off.
We forget about scrubs because it's just always there. You're always going to put something on. You're not going to go in your house clothes, right? You're not going to wear, sweatpants and gown up. So I think we forget about that. It's important to know that scrubs is your first line of defense, basically, right? You don't want to bring home stuff. You don't want to catch stuff from work. You don't want to get stuff on you. So it's absolutely the first line of defense.
The goal of the glove is to protect the worker from any potential infectious material. So disease, biofilm, debris, anything you're dealing with so that they can complete their day-to-day duties and their responsibilities in healthcare. So from SPD perspective, we're really trying to protect our hands from what we're touching with the contaminated trays. I'm going to throw in puncture resistant from sharp safety, but ultimately it's to protect all of our workers from any exposure to disease or pathogens.
That's usually the first question I get. Hey, is this vendor GPO compliant? Is this vendor do business with our health system already? Usually if that first answer is no, they're not part of the GPO, there'll be a recommendation from your buyer or your supply chain folks to say, hey, let's look at these 4 vendors that are, on the GPO. They are compliant. Again, very important because everyone's trying to save money. So the more compliant typically you are with your GPO, the more rebates and savings and no penalties are observed by doing that throughout the year.
My ideal world, my wish list of how we could educate people is to do more VR training. So maybe that can be your next big thing. But I think it'd be so cool if we could VR train people on PPE and donning and doffing. I think that would be the next big thing for healthcare. We could do all sorts of things VR in the future.